Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Toby Talks. I'm Toby Hoy, and if you're new here, this is where we cut through the leadership fluff and talk about what actually works in the real world. Today, we're going to tackle something that every single one of you listening will face at some point in your career if you haven't already, and that is leading through uncertainty and crises. And I'm not talking about minor hiccups or the everyday challenges of the random week. I'm talking about those moments when things genuinely fall apart, when the plan goes out the window, when the excrement meets the air circulation device, and when people are looking to you for answers and you honestly don't have one of them, urge alone them all. So grab your coffee, grab your blueberry and banana smoothie, settle in, and let's talk about how to actually lead when the ground starts shaking beneath your feet. So let me tell you about the moment that I realized that everything I thought I knew about leadership was incomplete. It's about 15 years ago. One of the teams that I managed was responsible for critical systems and business infrastructure. And one random Thursday morning, everything simply went sideways. One of my devs clicked on a link in an email that he shouldn't have clicked on, and he knew better. And the infamous they, got in. We were locked out of everything. The entire branch network was unable to operate. Phones in the ops center were ringing off the hook, and the CEO himself was blowing up my cell phone. I remember standing in the conference room, watching my team look at me with those expectant faces. They were waiting for me to have the answer, to pull out the playbook, to do whatever it was that leaders are supposed to do in moments like this. And you know what? I had nothing. All of those leadership books that I had read, the training sessions I attended, the carefully developed processes and procedures that said do this, then that, none of it felt relevant. It was like I had been training for a chess match and suddenly found myself in a boxing ring. That particular day was absolutely brutal. We fixed things and made more mistakes and then fixed those, and we learned hard lessons, but it fundamentally changed how I thought about leadership. Because here's the thing, most of us develop our leadership skills during what I like to call peacetime. You know what I mean, where things are predictable. You got your goals, you've got processes, you've got regular rhythms. It's all puppies, rainbows, and kittens. Leadership in peacetime is like driving on a smooth highway with cruise control on. But crisis leadership, that is a completely different skill set. And the transition from one to the other isn't smooth. It's jarring. It's uncomfortable. And if you're not prepared for it, it can really throw you off your game. So let's talk about what your team actually needs from you when everything goes wrong. I used to think it was about having all the answers, to show up with a solution, to be the expert and save the day, very heroic, right? Except that's not what people need at all in a crisis. What they really need is direction, not perfection, direction. Think about the best crisis leaders that you've ever seen. They weren't necessarily the smartest people in the room or the most experienced. They were the ones who could look at chaos and create some sense of order. The ones who could say, okay, here's what we know now, here's what we don't, and here's what we're going to do next. That clarity of thought or clarity of vision becomes incredibly valuable in times of uncertainty because people can handle not knowing everything. What they can't handle is feeling like there is nobody driving the train. During that system breach that I mentioned earlier, my breakthrough moment came when I stopped trying to have all of the answers and started focusing on asking the right questions instead, which brings me to a framework that has saved me more times than I can count. It's simply three questions that cut through all of the noise, all of the fluff. So those three questions, question number one is, what is the immediate threat? not what are the long-term implications, not what are the social or political ramifications, not the root cause analysis that you will do later, is what is the single thing that is going to cause the most damage if we don't address it right now. I see leaders get paralyzed trying to solve everything simultaneously, and I get it. When you're in crisis mode, everything feels urgent. But here's the reality: you can't fix everything at once. You need to triage. During that particular Thursday, my initial instinct was first to fire the dev and then understand the technical problems and plan our communication and then develop long-term solutions all simultaneously. We were absolutely spinning in circles. Then someone on my team asked me a brilliant question. It was, what happens if we do nothing for the next hour? And suddenly it all became clear. Our immediate threat wasn't actually the technical issue. The immediate threat or problem was that our staff and customers were making critical business decisions based on incomplete or incorrect information. So we stopped everything else and focused on communication first. It was, we're going to fix the information problem, then we're going to fix the technical problem. And that one shift changed everything. Question number 2 that you need to ask is, who needs to know what and when? Information management during a crisis is critical. And here's where many leaders just mess it up. They try to craft one perfect message for everyone. But not everyone needs the same information at the same time. Your executive team needs a different briefing than your frontline staff. Your customers need a different message than your internal teams. Trying to make one message work for everyone usually means that it serves no one well. So think strategically about this. Who needs detailed technical information? Who needs just the business impact? And who needs to hear from you directly rather than through their manager or some other intermediary? Question number 3, what decisions can only I make? This one is huge because it forces you to actually lead rather than just be a highly stressed individual contributor. During a crisis, there's a temptation to take on every task. You feel responsible for everything, so you try to do everything. But if you're spending your time on decisions that someone else could make, you're not leading. You're just busy. Your job is to focus on the calls that only you can make. Everything else needs to be delegated, even during a crisis, especially during a crisis. So let's talk about the biggest mistake that I see leaders make during a crisis. And I have made this mistake myself. So I'm speaking from painful experience here. The mistake is waiting until you have good news to communicate anything. You sit there and think, I'll just wait until I have something positive to share, or at least I'll have the complete picture. Meanwhile, days go by without any updates, and people start filling that silence with their worst assumptions. Here's the key part that you need to understand is during a crisis, frequency beats perfection every single time. Your team doesn't need you to have all of the answers. They need to know that you're actively working on the problem. They need to know that you see what they see. They need to know that this isn't being ignored or minimized. I learned this from a mentor who had a simple rule. During a crisis, if 24 hours pass without any communication, you've waited too long. Even if your update is simply, here's what we learned today, here's what we're working on tomorrow, and here's what we still don't know, that is infinitely more better than absolute silence. And when you do communicate, especially to the outside world, please cut the corporate jargon. This isn't the time for we are working diligently to resolve, or we're committed to excellence. People will smell that BS from a mile away. And during a crisis, it destroys trust faster than the actual problem. Simply be straight with people. Tell them what you know. Tell them what you don't know. And tell them what you're doing about it. That's it. One of the hardest parts of crisis leadership is making decisions without all of the information that you'd normally want. In peacetime, you can take your time. You can run the analysis and build the business case, get input from all the stakeholders, and make a data-driven decision. In a crisis, you are lucky if you have 60 or 70% of the information before you need to make a decision. This is where the analytical leaders really struggle. They are trained to make data-driven decisions, and yet they're suddenly being asked to make a judgment call based on incomplete information. It feels reckless and it breaks their brain a little bit. But here's the reality. Not making a decision is still making a decision. It's just a decision to let circumstances decide for you. There's a simple test for this. When you're faced with a decision with incomplete information, ask, hey, if I wait until I have more data, will that data actually change the decision that I'm going to make? If the answer is yes, and waiting a little bit longer won't make things significantly worse, then wait. If the answer is no, or if waiting will make things infinitely worse, then make a decision. The key there is being upfront about your confidence level. Don't present a decision made with 60 or 70% of the data as if you have 100% certainty. There is a huge difference between saying, here's what we're doing, versus based on what we know now, here's what we're doing, and we will adjust as we learn more. The second version of that gives you permission to pivot without losing credibility, because in a crisis, you will need to adjust course. You will need to change midway. That's not failure. That is adaptation. All right, we're getting close to the end here, but I want to talk about something that honestly doesn't get enough attention. It's the aftermath, because here's what nobody tells you. The hardest part of crisis leadership is often comes after the crisis has passed. When you're in the thick of it, you're running on adrenaline. Everything is urgent and priorities are often clear. Then suddenly it's over. Things stabilize and everyone expects to just flip a switch and go back to normal. Except that you can't. Your team can't. Everyone is running on fumes. Their emotional batteries are depleted. The leaders who handle this part of crisis leadership well do three things after the crisis. Thing number one is they name what happened. They don't just move on as if it were business as usual. They acknowledge there was a thing. They acknowledge it was hard and that people stepped up and that it took a little something out of everyone. Second is they create space for recovery. Maybe that means being flexible about deadlines for a bit. Maybe it's adjusting workloads as necessary. Or maybe it's just accepting that productivity will be a little lower for a while people catch their breath. And third, they do an honest debrief, not a blame session, a real conversation about what worked, what didn't, and what they would do differently next time. Because here's the thing, there will be a next time. So let me bring all of this together. Crisis leadership isn't about being fearless. It's not about having all of the answers all of the time. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being steady when everything around you is unstable. It's about providing direction when things feel directionless. It's about making the best call that you can with the information that you have, and then adjusting as you learn more. And here's the good news. All of this is learnable. You don't have to wait for a major crisis to develop these skills. Start practicing with the small stuff. Pay attention to how you show up during the little emergencies. work on making decisions with incomplete information, and get better at communicating more frequently and clearly. Because when the big one hits, and it will, at some point, you want these patterns already wired in. So that's all I've got for you today. If this resonated with you, I would love to hear about it. Send me a message, leave a comment down below, whatever works for you. And if you found this information helpful, please share it with another leader who might need to hear it. Until next time, I'm Toby Hoy. Keep leading, keep learning, and remember that steady beats perfect every single time. Take care.